16 years ago, my 19-year-old daughter left a newborn baby on my porch in a cracked blue laundry basket with a note that said only 3 words: I can't stay. Last Tuesday, she came back wearing a cream cashmere coat, carrying a ring light and a girl filming on an iPhone. She smiled at me like we were old friends and said, "Mom, I think it's finally time I reconnect with my son. My followers are really going to love this journey." Hello, everybody. I'll say this right now. If someone disappears for 16 years and returns with a camera before an apology, I already know trouble's walking up that porch. Tell me where you're watching from, and honestly, would you even let her inside? I was standing in my kitchen slicing pears for a tarte tatin when the doorbell rang. My grandson Miles was upstairs soldering wires into some old radio he bought at a flea market, and I remember wiping my hands on a dish towel before opening the door. I expected the mailman. Maybe Mrs. Coulter from next door asking for cinnamon again. Not Blair. At first, I didn't even recognize my own daughter. Her hair was platinum now, lips overfilled, nails sharp enough to cut glass. Behind her stood a nervous little brunette holding a designer tote and filming everything with a phone mounted on a stabilizer. "Mom?" Blair said softly, like she practiced it in the mirror. "You look good." I stared at her for a full 5 seconds before speaking. Why is she recording me? The brunette lowered the phone slightly. Blair laughed under her breath. "Relax. It's just behind-the-scenes footage." Behind the scenes, like my life was some cooking show. "You need to turn that off," I said. Blair ignored me completely and peeked around my shoulder into the house. "So, this is where he grew up?" "He. Not Miles. Not my grandson. Not even your son. Just he." Like she was discussing a prop she left in storage. Then she finally said it. "I want my son back." I felt something cold move through my chest. For 16 years, I packed lunches, sat through fevers, worked double shifts at the pharmacy, learned how to unclog inhalers at 2 in the morning, and stretched one roasted chicken into 3 dinners with rosemary rice and leftover gravy. 16 years of birthdays, broken bones, science fairs, and nightmares. And now she stood on my porch, smelling like expensive perfume, and airport lounges, saying she wanted him back like she'd misplaced a jacket. "For Instagram," she added casually. "People connect with authentic family healing now." I honestly thought I misheard her. "What?" Blair smiled wider. "Mom, this could actually be beautiful. A real reunion story. People eat this stuff up." Upstairs, I heard Miles moving across the floorboards, and for the first time since Blair showed up, I got scared. Miles came downstairs halfway through Blair's little performance, wiping grease off his fingers with the hem of his faded Black Sabbath shirt. He'd gotten taller again over the summer, almost 6 foot now, all shoulders and restless energy, with dark curls falling into his eyes exactly the way his grandfather's used to. He stopped on the last step when he saw the stranger filming in our doorway. Then he looked at Blair. I watched his face carefully, waiting for recognition, curiosity, maybe anger. But mostly, he looked confused. Blair's expression changed instantly. Softer eyes. Trembling smile. She even pressed a hand to her chest like she was in one of those dramatic hospital shows. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Miles." The brunette behind her tilted the phone upward to catch the moment better. That's when something ugly sparked inside me. Turn that off. The girl finally lowered the phone completely. Miles looked between us. "Grandma, who is this?" You could have shattered glass with the silence that followed. Not because he didn't know. Deep down, he probably did. Kids always know more than adults think. But hearing him ask it out loud hit Blair harder than I expected. Her smile twitched for half a second. "It's me," she said gently. "I'm your mom." Miles blinked once, then twice. No movie reaction. No running hug. No tears. Just a 16-year-old boy trying to fit a stranger into a space that had been empty his entire life. "Oh," he said quietly. That one word nearly broke the whole porch apart. Blair recovered fast. Too fast. "I know this is overwhelming," she said, stepping forward carefully. "But I've thought about you every single day." That was a lie. I knew it. God knew it. Probably even the mailman knew it. Because people who think about their child every day usually don't disappear for 16 years without a birthday card. Miles crossed his arms. "Why are you here now?" The brunette shifted awkwardly beside the hydrangeas lining my porch. Blair shot her a quick glance before answering. "I'm ready to fix things." No, that wasn't the real answer either. I could see it already. The rehearsed pauses, the polished voice, the strategic sadness. Blair wasn't talking like a daughter or a mother. She was talking like someone pitching a streaming documentary. Then Miles noticed the camera rig. His eyes narrowed immediately. Smart boy. "Why is she filming this?" Blair laughed softly again. "It's just content for my platform. People have followed my healing journey for years." "Healing from what?" Miles asked. That landed harder than he intended. Blair's jaw tightened for one tiny second. "From mistakes." I finally stepped between them. "You need to leave." "Mom?" "No." My voice came out sharper than I meant. "You don't walk into this house with a camera crew like you're adopting a rescue dog." The brunette looked genuinely uncomfortable now. Blair, though, stayed calm. Too calm. "I'm not trying to fight with you," she said quietly. "But legally, he's still my son." There it was. Not "I missed him." Not "I'm sorry." Legally. Miles looked at me then, and I saw something in his face I hadn't seen since he was little after bad thunderstorms. Fear. Not fear of her. Fear that his life was about to stop belonging to him. Blair didn't leave after that. That was the part that unsettled me most. Most people, decent people, would have understood they weren't welcome. They would have lowered their voice, maybe apologized, maybe asked to come back another day. Blair just smiled tighter, like this was all part of a difficult but inspiring reunion arc she planned to post, with piano music later. "I think we should all sit down," she said. "As a family." Miles looked at me before answering her, not the other way around. That alone irritated her. You could see it flicker across her face for half a second, before she buried it again beneath influencer calm. "I have homework," Miles muttered. "You like film photography, right?" Blair suddenly asked him. "I saw your little short movie online. The train station thing?" My stomach tightened instantly. Miles never posted publicly. His school account barely had 20 followers. "How did you see that?" he asked carefully. Blair smiled. "People send me things." That meant she'd already been researching him, watching him, maybe for weeks, maybe longer. The brunette finally spoke for the first time. "Blair, We're running behind. Blair ignored her. Miles, I live in Atlanta now. I have a place in Midtown, recording studio downstairs, skyline view, amazing creative scene. You'd love it there. I like it here, he answered. Again, wrong answer for her. I knew my daughter well enough to spot the cracks before anyone else did. Blair always wanted immediate admiration, immediate loyalty, immediate results. Even as a little girl, she'd quit piano lessons after 2 months because applause took too long. Now she looked around my tiny kitchen with visible disappointment. The old floral curtains, the magnet-covered fridge, the cast-iron gumbo pot cooling on the stove. "You still live here?" she asked. That one almost made me laugh. Yes, Blair. Some people don't rebrand every 6 months. Miles glanced down, hiding a smile. Blair caught it. Her tone sharpened just slightly. You know, Grandma June probably told you a very one-sided version of things. I never stopped him from finding you, I said immediately. That's not what I heard. Now that was interesting, because nobody had heard anything from Blair in over a decade, except sponsored skincare ads and fake wellness quotes beside infinity pools. Miles shifted uncomfortably. Can you both not do this right now? For a second, nobody spoke. Outside, a motorcycle rattled down Willow Creek Road. Somewhere, 2 houses over, somebody was grilling sausage because I could smell fennel and char through the screen door. Ordinary Tuesday evening, ordinary neighborhood. But my life was quietly splitting open right there beside the cookie jar. Then Blair reached into her purse and slid a glossy folder onto my kitchen table. Not papers, not letters, brand materials, mood boards, photography concepts, even possible video titles. Finding my son again. He chose to forgive me. Our first hug after 16 years. I felt sick. Miles opened the folder slowly, staring at page after page of planned content built around his face. Some of the pictures were screenshots from his school's public website. One was taken through the fence at his robotics competition. What the hell is this? He asked. Blair actually looked confused by his reaction. It's a campaign proposal, she said carefully. My management team thinks our story could really inspire people. That was the exact moment I stopped seeing her as my daughter standing in my kitchen, and started seeing a stranger trying to buy ownership of a boy she never bothered to raise. 3 days after Blair showed up at my house, she appeared at Miles's school like some celebrity arriving for a red carpet. Brindle Falls High was hosting its annual student showcase. Photography, short films, robotics projects, all crammed into the gymnasium under strings of cheap gold lights and folding banners made by exhausted PTA parents. Miles had spent 2 months editing a documentary about abandoned train depots across the county. He barely slept the week before finishing it. He pretended not to care whether people liked it, which meant he cared deeply. I was standing near the refreshment table pouring weak fruit punch into paper cups when the entire mood in the gym shifted. You could feel it happen before you even saw her. Heads turning, whispering, phones lifting. Blair walked in wearing a fitted camel coat and knee-high boots that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment back when I still had one. Taryn followed behind her, carrying 2 garment bags and, naturally, the camera rig. I almost dropped my cup. Oh no, I muttered. Miles was near the projector screen talking to his film teacher, Mr. Dunleavy. He saw me looking toward the entrance and turned. Then his whole body stiffened. Blair spotted him instantly and smiled like she'd rehearsed this exact moment in front of a mirror. "There he is," she whispered, dramatically, and Taryn lifted the camera. This is exactly the kind of moment that tells you whether somebody came for family or for footage. Me, personally, I would have walked that boy straight out the side exit before a single fake tear hit TikTok. What about you? Before I could move, Blair crossed the gym floor toward Miles. People noticed. Of course they noticed. Blair had nearly 500,000 followers, and even in a small town like Brindle Falls, somebody always recognizes internet fame. "Oh my God, that's Blair West." "Wait, isn't she that wellness woman?" "Who's the kid?" Miles looked trapped. Not emotional, not happy. Trapped. "Hey," Blair said softly once she reached him. "You look so handsome." Miles glanced immediately at the camera instead of her face. "Why are you filming again?" Taryn lowered it halfway. Blair touched Miles's arm carefully, like she was handling glass. "I just wanted to support you tonight. You didn't even know I went here until last week." That one landed. Mr. Dunleavy quietly stepped backward and disappeared into the crowd like a smart man escaping a tornado. Blair recovered quickly. "I'm trying now, Miles." Then, because apparently humiliation wasn't complete yet, she turned toward the projector where his documentary poster stood displayed. "Oh, wow," she said loudly enough for nearby parents to hear. "He got his artistic side from me." I saw Miles's jaw tighten instantly. No, he didn't. He got it from sitting on the floor beside me during thunderstorms while we watched old documentaries on PBS because cable was too expensive. He got it from fixing thrift store cameras with screwdrivers and stubbornness. He got it from himself, not her. Then Blair leaned closer and whispered something that only Miles heard. But I saw his expression change immediately, cold, sharp. "What did you just say to him?" I asked. Blair smiled without looking at me. "I just told my son that opportunities are bigger than this town." My son? There it was again. Like she could repeat the phrase enough times to erase 16 years. Then Miles stepped backward and spoke louder than I expected. "You don't know me." The gym went quiet around us. Even the awful jazz playlist seemed quieter somehow. Blair's face twitched. Tiny, fast, dangerous. And right there, in front of the robotics table and the stale brownie stand, I realized something horrifying. She wasn't upset because she missed him. She was upset because he wasn't following the script. By Saturday morning, the video was everywhere. Not the full encounter at the school, of course, just the edited version Blair uploaded at 2 in the morning with soft piano music and subtitles designed to make strangers cry in grocery store checkout lines. Trying to reconnect with my son after years of painful separation. Some wounds in families run deep. Please be kind. Healing isn't linear. Conveniently missing the camera crew, the staged entrance, the part where she treated Miles like a sponsored collaboration. By breakfast, the clip already had almost 2 million views, and suddenly my quiet little town started looking at me differently. I noticed it first at Hargrove's Market while reaching for a carton of buttermilk. Mrs. Kenley, a woman who'd borrowed my bunt pan every Thanksgiving since 2012, gave me this awkward, tight smile and quickly turned her cart away. Then 2 teenage girls near the freezer aisle whispered, "That's the grandma. She looks meaner in real life." I kept walking. At 65, you learn something important. Humiliation burns hottest when you react to it publicly. But it still burns. By the time I reached checkout, even Curtis, the cashier with acne scars who always called me Miss June, avoided eye contact. "You okay today?" he asked quietly while scanning my groceries. Before I could answer, the woman behind me snorted. "Maybe she should let that poor mother see her child." I turned slowly. Mid-50s, leopard print scarf, face like she collected arguments recreationally. "Excuse me?" "She's trying to reconnect," the woman continued boldly, now that people were listening. "Everybody online says you kept the boy from her." There it was. The internet had arrived in Brindle Falls. And like always, people preferred a pretty lie over a complicated truth. I paid for my groceries without another word, though my hands shook badly enough I dropped my loyalty card twice. Outside, rain clouds were gathering low over the parking lot. The air smelled metallic, storm-heavy. I loaded groceries into my old Subaru while trying not to cry over a woman named Denise or Cheryl, or whatever the hell her name was. Then my phone buzzed. "Miles, you okay?" That nearly broke me. Not because of the message itself, because after all this chaos, the 16-year-old boy in the middle of it was still checking on me. I sat in the driver's seat staring at the windshield for almost a full minute before answering. "I'm okay, sweetheart." "You home?" 3 dots appeared immediately. "No. Someone came to school asking questions about you." Cold spread through my stomach. I called him instantly. "What do you mean, questions?" Miles sounded tense. "Some woman from an online magazine. She asked if you were controlling, asked if I felt isolated at home." I gripped the steering wheel harder. "She did what?" "I didn't answer anything," he said quickly. "But Grandma, this is getting weird." Weird. That wasn't the word I would have chosen. Cruel, maybe. Calculated. Predatory. But not weird. I drove home through rain so hard the wipers could barely keep up. The whole way, one thought kept circling in my head. Blair wasn't trying to reconnect privately anymore. She was building a narrative. And narratives needed villains. When I got home, I went straight to the hall closet and dragged out the old green metal lockbox from the top shelf. Miles walked in just as I set it on the kitchen table. "What's that?" "Proof," I answered. Inside were 16 years of papers. Medical records, school forms, copies of every unanswered letter I mailed Blair, receipts from orthodontists, therapists, summer camps, emergency room visits, and right on top, folded small enough to fit into my palm, was the original note she left beside him in that laundry basket. "I can't stay." Miles didn't say anything for a long time after I opened the lockbox. Rain hammered against the kitchen windows while he slowly flipped through 16 years of our life reduced to paperwork. A child's inhaler prescription from 2013. Dental bills I paid in installments for almost 4 years. Report cards, vaccine forms, a faded zoo ticket from a field trip where he threw up cotton candy all over my sneakers. Tiny evidence of an entire childhood. And Blair had missed all of it. Miles picked up one of the letters carefully. The envelope still had the yellow return to sender sticker across the front. "You wrote to her?" "Every year," I admitted quietly. He looked up at me fast. "Why?" "Because I didn't want him thinking he'd been abandoned without a fight. Because I spent 16 years hoping my daughter would wake up one morning and remember she had a son. Because part of me kept believing she'd come home before he was old enough to understand she chose not to. But I only said, 'You deserved the option.'" Miles sat down slowly at the table again. The kitchen smelled like rainwater, and the gumbo I'd forgotten was still warming on the stove. Somewhere in the living room, the old grandfather clock clicked loudly enough to feel annoying. Finally, he unfolded the tiny note. The original one. Her handwriting was younger then, messier, still dotted hearts over lowercase i's back in those days. I can't stay. That was all. No apology. No explanation. No, I love him. Just 3 words and a disappearing taillight at 4 a.m. Miles stared at the paper so long, I thought maybe he'd stop breathing. She really left me like this? The question came out smaller than his normal voice, not angry, wounded. I sat across from him carefully. Your mother was 19, scared, selfish, and running from every responsibility in her life. Those things can all be true at once. You still defend her. That caught me off guard. I'm not defending her. You kind of are. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Maybe he was right. Mothers have a bad habit of protecting their children long after they deserve it. Even grown ones. Miles leaned back in his chair and rubbed both hands over his face. Why didn't you ever tell me all this? Because I wanted you to grow up loved before you grew up angry. That finally made him look at me again. Outside, thunder rolled low across Brindle Falls. I think I want to meet her alone, he said quietly. Every muscle in my body tightened instantly. No. Grandma? No. I stood too quickly, chair scraping against the tile. Absolutely not. Why? You think I'll leave? That's not what this is about. Then what is it about? I looked toward the lockbox, toward 16 years of scraped knees and parent-teacher conferences and heating pads and burnt birthday cakes and flu seasons and midnight panic attacks after his asthma diagnosis. How do you explain to someone that you're terrified of losing the person who became your whole life? She doesn't know how to love people without using them, I said finally. Miles looked down at the note again, then at the stack of unopened letters, then at me. You still loved her anyway. That one hurt because it was true. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed across the table. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something told me not to. So I answered. Hello? A calm male voice replied instantly. Mrs. Harrow, this is Owen Strell from Strell and Baines Legal Group. I represent Ms. Blair West. Lawyer. Of course she had a lawyer now. I'd like to discuss custody arrangements regarding her son. I barely slept that night. Not because of the lawyer. Not even because Blair was suddenly throwing around words like custody after disappearing for 16 years like a magician fleeing unpaid rent. No, I couldn't sleep because Miles had asked to meet her alone. That fear sat inside my chest like wet concrete. At around 6 a.m, I gave up pretending rest was possible and shuffled into the kitchen to make coffee. The sky outside was still dark blue, the kind of early southern morning where everything smells faintly of wet pavement and pine bark. I had just poured cream into my mug when headlights swept across the front windows. Then came a knock. 3 sharp taps, not neighborly, official. Miles came downstairs instantly, still half asleep. Who's here? I already knew. When I opened the door, a woman in a gray county jacket stood on my porch beside a uniformed deputy. She held a clipboard tucked against her chest. Mrs. June Harrow? Yes. I'm Dana Bell from Child and Family Services. We received a welfare concern regarding a minor in this residence. Of course we did. Behind her, the deputy avoided eye contact, like a man who hated these kinds of calls. What kind of concern? I asked evenly. Dana glanced at her notes. The report alleges emotional isolation, possible manipulation, and concerns regarding your cognitive stability. I actually laughed, not because it was funny, because it was so unbelievably insulting I didn't know what else to do. Miles stepped closer behind me. What? Dana softened slightly when she saw him. You must be Miles. I live here, he answered coldly. The deputy finally spoke. Ma'am, this is routine. We just need to verify the situation. Routine. Funny how humiliations always get renamed when professionals do them. Now see, this is where fake stories online become dangerous in real life. Once somebody paints you as the unstable old woman, suddenly strangers start showing up at your door with clipboards. Me, personally, I'd stay calm, invite them in, and let facts do the talking. Panic only feeds people like Blair, so I stepped aside. Come in. Dana entered carefully, eyes scanning everything automatically. The framed photos, the clean counters, Miles's backpack tossed beside the stairs, the simmering pot of chicory coffee on the stove. Do you have food in the home? She asked. Miles looked offended. Seriously? I opened the refrigerator without a word. Leftover gumbo, eggs, milk, vegetables. 3 containers of homemade blackberry preserves. The deputy actually looked embarrassed now. Dana checked boxes on her form while asking questions in that careful social worker tone designed to sound gentle while quietly judging your entire life. Who manages school enrollment? She does, Miles answered. Medical appointments? She does. Transportation? She does. Finally, Dana looked at him directly. Do you feel unsafe here? Miles answered so fast it startled even me. No. Not hesitation, not politeness. No. Then came the real blow. Dana flipped one more page on her clipboard. Your biological mother claims she's been denied meaningful access to you for years. Miles went still beside me. And suddenly, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just Blair improvising anymore. She was building a legal story. Old grandmother, confused household, stolen child, public sympathy, all neat and polished for court and for social media. Then Miles quietly asked the question neither of us wanted answered. Did she send you because of the videos? Dana hesitated. That hesitation told us everything. The moment Dana and the deputy left, the house felt different. Not unsafe. Violated. Like somebody had walked through our memories wearing muddy shoes. Miles stood at the front window watching their county SUV disappear down Willow Creek Road. His jaw stayed tight the entire time. She really did that, he muttered finally. I didn't answer. Because now there was no room left for comforting lies about Blair being confused or emotional or overwhelmed. Confused people don't weaponize social services. Emotional people don't send lawyers after the child they abandoned. Strategic people do. Miles turned toward me suddenly. I want to see her. There it was again. That same sentence that made my stomach knot every time he said it. But this time, his voice sounded different. Not hopeful. Focused. You still think that's a good idea? I asked carefully. I think I need to know who she actually is. I leaned against the kitchen counter, exhausted down to my bones. And if she hurts you? Miles shrugged, though I could see tension in his shoulders. She already is. That shut me up. By noon, rain had cleared over Brindle Falls, leaving the sidewalk steaming under weak sunlight. I drove downtown with my hands clenched around the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles hurt. Not to meet Blair, to meet a lawyer. Marisol Vane's office sat above an old antique store beside the railroad district. The hallway smelled like dust, old paper, and somebody's burnt espresso. Her receptionist wore enormous glasses and chewed fennel seeds while typing. "Mrs. Harrow?" she asked. "Ms. Vane's expecting you." Marisol turned out to be a sharp-eyed woman in her late 50s, wearing a charcoal suit and a dark green brooch shaped like a serpent, swallowing its own tail. She didn't waste time pretending warmth. "Your daughter's not after custody," she said, after reading the papers I brought. "Not really." I frowned. "Then what is she after?" "Control of the narrative." That sentence landed hard because it sounded exactly right. Marisol spread several printed screenshots across her desk. Blair's videos, comment sections, articles already popping up online. Influencer reunites with son after painful separation. Grandmother allegedly kept child from mother. One headline actually called me reclusive. I snorted. "I work at a pharmacy and host church bake sales." Marisol almost smiled. Internet journalism rarely rewards accuracy. She tapped Blair's profile with one manicured fingernail. "Your daughter's building emotional leverage. Public sympathy first. Legal pressure second. If she can make you look unstable or controlling, she gains bargaining power." "For what?" Marisol leaned back slowly. "Sponsorships, interviews, family content. Maybe even rights deals if the story gets big enough." I felt sick all over again. Miles sat quietly beside me until now. Then he spoke. "So, I'm basically content to her." Marisol looked him dead in the eye. "From what I'm seeing, yes." That was the first moment I saw genuine anger appear in him. Not teenage frustration, not confusion. Anger. Marisol opened another folder. "Now here's the interesting part. Your daughter's management company already pitched a campaign called Finding My Boy Again." Miles's face hardened immediately. "How do you know that?" "Because somebody from her team is nervous." I stared at her. "What does that mean?" "It means," Marisol said calmly, "someone close to your daughter may be willing to talk." And for the first time since Blair stepped back into our lives, I realized something important. Her perfect little online story was starting to crack from the inside. 2 days later, Miles met Blair alone. I hated every second leading up to it. He insisted on going, said if he didn't hear her side himself, it would keep eating at him. So we compromised. Public place, daylight, his phone location on, and one condition from me that he rolled his eyes at immediately. "You're taking this." I handed him the small black recorder he'd repaired last winter from an old Bakelite radio kit he found at a flea market. "Grandma, humor me." In the end, he slipped it into his jacket pocket anyway. The meeting happened at Arbor Lane Cafe downtown, the kind of place that serves lavender lattes in ceramic cups shaped like seashells. Blair picked it because it looked good on camera. Except this time, Miles texted her beforehand. No filming. That alone apparently irritated her. He told me later she arrived 10 minutes late, wearing oversized sunglasses and carrying one of those tiny dogs that tremble constantly for no reason. No camera crew visible. But Miles noticed her phone was already positioned face up on the table when he sat down. Just in case. She hugged me immediately, he told me that night while pacing our kitchen. Like, instantly, before we even talked. How'd that feel? He thought about it. Fake. That answer hurt more than if he'd said terrible. Because fake meant he wanted it to feel real. Blair ordered saffron tea she barely touched and spent the first 10 minutes talking about herself. Her anxiety, her healing journey, her difficult youth, how becoming famous online distorted her identity. Not one apology, not one concrete explanation for leaving a baby on a porch. Then she finally got to the real point. She said people online connected deeply with our story, Miles said flatly, and that brands were reaching out. There it was, not motherhood. Metrics. I sat down slowly at the kitchen table while he kept talking. She said there's this documentary producer in California interested in a limited series. What kind of series? Miles laughed once. Bitter little sound. About forgiveness. Of course. Blair apparently laid out the whole fantasy over tiny lemon cakes dusted with powdered sugar. Matching interviews. Rebuilding trust. Family therapy scenes. A possible podcast afterward. Then came the sentence that changed everything. She told me if I moved in with her for a few months, we could both benefit financially. My vision nearly blurred. She said that? Miles nodded slowly. Then she started talking about sponsorship percentages. I closed my eyes. God help me. For one full second, I wanted to drive straight to Atlanta and throw her phone into the ocean. But Miles wasn't finished. She didn't know I was recording. I looked up immediately. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the recorder, and set it gently on the table between us. You were right, he said quietly. She wasn't talking to me like a son. The room felt completely silent suddenly, except for the hum of the refrigerator. Then Miles pressed play. Blair's voice crackled softly through the speaker. People love redemption arcs, Miles, especially when they're real. A pause. Then the line that made my stomach turn cold. Honestly, sweetheart, without you, the comeback doesn't really work. Neither of us spoke after that, because at that moment, whatever tiny chance remained for Blair to explain herself honestly, died right there on my kitchen table. The town festival started at sunset every October beside the old railway depot on Mercer Street. Brindle Falls liked pretending it was charmingly historic instead of half-abandoned and permanently smelling faintly like fried dough and diesel fuel. Kids ran between food trucks carrying neon lemonade. Somebody played blues guitar near the fountain. Old couples danced under hanging Edison bulbs while teenagers filmed TikToks beside hay bales they'd normally make fun of. And somehow, in the middle of all that ordinary small-town noise, my daughter decided it was the perfect place to publicly reclaim a child she never raised. Miles told me he was just going to walk around for an hour. I knew better. The second he grabbed the recorder and wore the dark denim jacket instead of his usual hoodie, I understood he'd already made up his mind. Do you want me there? I asked before he left. He hesitated at the doorway, then quietly said, No, I think she acts different when you're around. That sentence sat heavy in my chest long after he walked out. For almost 40 minutes, I paced the kitchen, pretending to clean. I wiped counters that were already spotless, rearranged spice jars, burned an entire batch of pecans because I forgot they were roasting. Then my phone buzzed. 3 messages in a row from Mrs. Coulter next door. June, turn on your phone. Your daughter is live. Honey, this looks bad. Cold spread through me instantly. I opened Instagram, and there she was. Blair stood beneath the glowing festival lights wearing a cream-colored coat like she was starring in a holiday movie. Her makeup was flawless. Hair curled perfectly. Sad little smile prepared for maximum sympathy. Thousands of viewers were already watching live. The camera angled carefully toward Miles beside her. Not fully beside her, though. Positioned slightly lower, like supporting cast. I know this moment has been a long time coming, Blair said emotionally into the phone. Family healing is messy, but I promised myself I'd stop hiding from my past. The comments exploded so fast I could barely read them. You're so brave. Crying right now. He looks just like you. I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter hard enough my fingers hurt. Miles looked deeply uncomfortable. Hands in pockets. Eyes scanning the crowd instead of the camera. Blair touched his shoulder dramatically. This is my son, Miles. Not this is Miles. Not introducing him like a human being. Presenting him. Then she smiled softly at him. Do you want to tell everybody what tonight means to you? God. Even through the screen I could see it. She expected gratitude, expected tears, expected the big emotional moment that would spread across every platform by morning. But Miles surprised her. Can you stop filming for 1 second? He asked calmly. Blair laughed lightly, still smiling for the audience. People are just happy for us. No, he said. They're watching content. That shook her a little. Tiny crack. Visible only if you knew Blair as long as I had. She recovered immediately. Miles, sweetheart, I understand this is emotional. What's my birthday? The smile froze on her face. The live stream comments slowed almost instantly. What? My birthday, Miles repeated, without looking it up. Blair blinked twice. Around them, festival music still played somewhere in the background. A child screamed excitedly near the Ferris wheel. Somebody dropped a tray of drinks. And my daughter, the woman publicly rebuilding motherhood online, could not answer the simplest question in the world. I mean, obviously I know. What hospital was I born in? Her expression shifted again, this time worse. Miles, this isn't really appropriate for live. What's my middle name? Now the comments were changing. Wait, what? Why doesn't she know? Blair finally lowered the phone slightly. You're embarrassing me. That line hit like a gunshot. Not you're hurting me. Not please stop. Embarrassing. Miles nodded slowly, like he'd just confirmed something painful. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out the recorder. Even through the live stream, I felt my entire body go still. What's that? Blair asked sharply. The conversation from the cafe. Color drained from her face instantly. Miles. You said I was part of your comeback. The crowd nearby had started noticing now. People slowing down, turning toward them, phones lifting. Blair stepped closer, lowering her voice. Turn that off right now. But Miles pressed play. Her own voice crackled through the tiny speaker, loud enough for nearby people and the live stream to hear clearly. Honestly, sweetheart, without you, the comeback doesn't really work. Silence. Real silence. The kind that spreads outward, physically. Blair looked around wildly, as if searching for somebody to save her from her own words. Then Miles said the one thing I think finally shattered her perfect little performance. I'm not your comeback story. His voice didn't shake. I'm not your content. And he pointed nowhere, but everybody knew he meant me, didn't steal me. She stayed. The live stream ended abruptly 3 seconds later. But it was already too late. 3 days after the festival disaster, Blair stopped posting entirely. For an influencer, silence is panic. No inspirational quotes, no tearful stories, no carefully lit mental health breaks with herbal tea beside a window. Nothing. But the internet had already turned on her anyway. People clipped the live stream before she deleted it. The recorder audio spread everywhere. Reaction channels got involved. One woman with 6 million followers called Blair a Hallmark villain with lip filler, which honestly was cruel, but not entirely inaccurate. Meanwhile, our mailbox filled with things I never expected at 65 years old. Apology cards. Homemade cookies. One woman even sent Miles a handwritten letter saying her grandmother raised her too. Funny how quickly public opinion changes once the truth becomes less convenient to ignore. But none of that actually mattered. Because court day was coming. The hearing took place on a gray Thursday morning inside the county courthouse downtown. The building smelled like old paper, floor polish, and burnt coffee. Miles wore the navy button-up shirt I bought him last Christmas. I could tell he hated it because he kept tugging at the collar every 30 seconds. "You okay?" I asked quietly before we entered. "No," he answered honestly. Fair enough. Marisol met us near the courtroom carrying 2 thick folders and looking entirely too calm for a woman about to dismantle my daughter in public. "You brought the original note?" she asked me. I nodded. Good. Inside the courtroom, Blair barely looked recognizable. No glamorous coat, no expensive curls, no camera crew. Just a pale woman in a beige sweater sitting beside Owen Strell with dark circles under her eyes. For the first time since returning to Brindle Falls, she actually looked her age. 35, tired, human, and somehow that made everything sadder. The hearing started quietly enough. Owen stood first, talking about reconciliation, biological rights, emotional healing, and the unfortunate influence of online misunderstanding. Very polished, very careful. He painted Blair as a struggling young mother who made mistakes, but now wanted a relationship with her son. Then Marisol stood up, and the room changed temperature. She didn't raise her voice once, didn't dramatize anything. She just started laying reality on the table piece by piece like setting down bricks. The abandonment note. 16 years of unopened letters, medical records, school forms signed only by me, financial records, the legal guardianship documents Blair signed herself years earlier. Then came the recorder. Owen objected immediately. The judge allowed it anyway. So the courtroom listened to my daughter, casually discussing sponsorship percentages connected to her own child. Nobody looked at Blair after that, not even her lawyer. But the real turning point came from somebody I never expected to appear. Taryn, the assistant. She walked into court wearing plain black clothes and carrying a laptop bag against her chest like a shield. Blair's face went white the second she saw her. Taryn testified quietly, almost nervously, but every word landed clean. Yes, the reunion had been planned as content. Yes, management discussed audience engagement. Yes, they specifically predicted emotional confrontation clips would increase visibility. And yes, Blair approved a proposal describing Miles as the emotional centerpiece of the rebrand. That phrase echoed through the courtroom like something rotten. Blair finally snapped. "That's not what I meant!" For the first time, her polished voice cracked completely. Taryn looked at her sadly more than angrily. "You literally said tears perform better than forgiveness." The silence afterward felt enormous. Then the judge turned toward Miles. "You're 16, he said gently. "You're old enough for your opinion to matter here. Where do you want to live?" Every nerve in my body locked. Miles swallowed hard, then answered without hesitation. "With my grandmother." I stopped breathing for a second. The judge nodded slowly. "And what kind of relationship, if any, would you like with your biological mother?" Miles looked toward Blair for the first time all morning. Not hateful, not emotional, just disappointed. "I'll talk to her," he said quietly, "when she knows who I am without an audience watching." Even Marisol went still after that, because no lawyer in the world could improve a sentence like that. An hour later, the ruling was final. Miles stayed with me. Blair received limited contact rights under strict conditions. And most importantly, the judge prohibited any monetized or public online use of Miles's identity without his direct consent. The moment court adjourned, Blair stood frozen beside the defense table while everyone else started leaving. No cameras, no followers, no soundtrack, just consequences. Blair came back 11 days after court. No assistant, no makeup team, no camera crew orbiting around her like nervous moons. Just Blair. I saw her standing on my porch at 6:30 in the morning, holding a paper coffee tray with both hands, like she needed something physical to stop herself from shaking. The October air was cold enough to turn her breath white. For a strange second, she looked 20 again. Not famous, not polished, just tired. I opened the door but didn't invite her in immediately. "What do you want?" Her eyes moved past me automatically, searching the house for Miles. That told me everything before she even spoke. "I'm not here to fight." "Good. I'm exhausted." She swallowed hard. "Can I come inside?" I stepped aside slowly. The kitchen still smelled faintly like cinnamon and burnt sugar from the pecan pie. Miles ruined the night before because he forgot the timer while editing video footage. One slice sat abandoned beneath foil beside the stove. Blair noticed it instantly. "He bakes now?" "He lives here," I answered simply. That seemed to hurt her more than anger would have. She set the coffees down carefully on the table. Expensive place, too. The cups had little cardboard sleeves, and somebody had drawn leaves in the foam, like we were all emotionally stable adults. For almost a full minute, neither of us spoke. Then Blair finally whispered, "I lost everything." I leaned against the counter quietly. My management dropped me. The wellness brand canceled the contract. Half my followers think I'm a monster. Half. Interesting choice of word. Not "I hurt my son." Not "I hurt you." Still thinking like an audience existed somewhere. I didn't come here for sympathy, she added quickly. I need a chance to fix this. Before I could answer, footsteps creaked overhead. Miles. He appeared halfway down the stairs wearing gray sweatpants and one of my old university sweatshirts he'd stolen permanently last winter. His hair stuck out in 6 directions. Blair stood immediately. Hi, she said too fast. Miles stopped on the last stair. No smile, no anger either. Honestly, that almost seemed worse. Blair tried again. I was hoping maybe we could talk somewhere private. Miles glanced toward the kitchen table, toward the coffee, toward her phone sitting beside the cup. Face down. But there. Always there. You still brought it, he said quietly. Blair looked confused at first, then embarrassed. It's just my phone. No, Miles answered. It's the thing you always choose first. That one landed clean. Blair sat back down slowly, like her knees weakened. I know I messed up. Miles crossed his arms. You left me on a porch. Silence. Raw silence. The kind nobody edits nicely afterward. Finally, Blair whispered, I thought you'd have a better life without me. No, he replied calmly. You thought you'd have a better life without me. Not pretty crying either. Ugly, shaking, mascara running, crying. And for the first time since she returned to Brindle Falls, I believed she might actually be feeling something instead of performing it. But feeling bad and changing are 2 different things. Miles looked at me briefly before speaking again. I'm not saying never, he told Blair quietly. Maybe someday we can talk. Actually talk. But if there's ever another camera, another live stream, another healing journey post. He shook his head. Blair nodded immediately through tears. Okay. Then Miles did something I didn't expect. He walked to the hall table, opened the drawer, and pulled out the tiny folded note she left 16 years ago. I can't stay. He placed it gently in front of her. You should keep this now, he said. Blair stared at the paper like it physically hurt to look at it. And maybe it did. A few minutes later, she left quietly, without touching the second coffee. I watched from the window as she sat in her car for a long time before finally driving away through the morning fog. Miles stood beside me silently. You think she'll come back? He asked. I thought about it carefully before answering. Maybe. And if she does? I looked at my grandson, the boy somebody abandoned, the boy somebody tried to monetize, the boy who somehow still grew into a decent man anyway. Then next time, I said softly, she comes back as your mother, not as a brand. In the end, some people confuse access with love and attention with family. June protected that boy when it wasn't easy, wasn't glamorous, and definitely wasn't profitable. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments. Could you forgive someone who only came back once your life became useful to them?